Lalit, do I need to start the recording as well, or is it okay? Or are you there? Oh, great. Thank you. Um, okay. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to our BA Economics program. Now, you're the second batch that we are welcoming online, and to be honest, that it kind of disheartens me a little bit because because I've had that experience, right? I've had that experience, that college experience where uh, where these years bring out beautiful relationships in your life outside of your familial ties that you already have, and nothing nothing prepares you for this really up till this point. Once you start, you leave your home, you come to a new place, you start your life, and and you're on your own, basically you're free. So it's kind of liberating, it's kind of scary, it's a little bit of both things. So we wish that things were a little different, for so that we actually met face to face, we actually could welcome you in the campus. But yeah, but this is the second best option for us right now, so let's make the best of it. And hopefully from next semester, or hopefully from next semester maybe, we'll see you here on campus. And yeah, so to talk a little bit about myself, I did my mass. I think everybody, by this time would have checked me out on the JSGP website. Though for those of you who haven't, I can just tell you a little bit. I did my undergrad. I mean, I left my school at the age of, or you can say, I left my house or my hometown at the age of 17. I went to Delhi University for undergrad in economics. Sorry, why am I saying economics? Sorry, mathematics from Hindu College. I then went on to do my masters in mathematics from IIT Kanpur, and I then went on to do a PhD in economics from IGIDR Mumbai. This is an institute established by Reserve Bank of India. So, and it is amongst the top 4 or 5 contenders for master's program in economics in India. So if you want to, actually it is, I think, the second or most coveted master's program because it guarantees almost 100% placement. So it is pretty hard to get into at the end of the day, but it guarantees a career path for anybody who is interested in consultancy services, or any corporate work or financial market work. So yeah, so I did all that, and then I worked for a little while in Jamia. I worked, and then it's been 2 years since I've been here in the university. My areas or research interests lie predominantly in microeconomic theory. To be honest, I do a lot of game theory, a lot of mechanism design with a strong focus on auction theory. Now, if for those of you who are not familiar with auction theory, would remember, reading in the newspaper that the recent Nobel Prize winners were actually auction theorists, Paul Milgrom and Robert Wilson. They're auction theorists. So this is a very application oriented, public policy oriented field where game theorists have actually shown their prowess. Which brings me to the next question, that what exactly is game theory? What do we understand by that? Can anybody, tell me? You can raise your hand if you want to speak. Yeah.
It is a study of interaction between individuals or firms.
It is
I
the
mean, one may be
could you repeat yourself? I'm sorry.
study of economic interactions between individuals and firms.
Okay. So Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. What about? I have other hands raised also, so let's hear from them. Vedic, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so I think it's more so related to studying strategical interactions between two thinkers in a competitive environment and developing mathematical models for them.
Fair enough. Saloni.
So like public policy helps us make economic decisions regarding our governmental, keeping our government in mind. Similarly, game theory helps us make economical and statistical decisions in the corporate sector more.
Yeah, this is okay. This is the point that I would want to explain a little bit. Devisha.
So I think that game theory is when an individual or an organization applies their strategy to achieve an outcome and get the benefit.
Okay. Finally, Ananya.
It studies the strategic interactions between two or more than two parties, and it shows how people are motivated to do a certain thing and what are the outcomes of their actions and how it affects other parties as well.
Good. So you guys are pretty much saying the same thing, which is that game theory is a means of studying interaction between individuals or firms. That's what uh, the broader sense has been. Now, my point is, let's look at the broadest definition possible. So, um, does anybody have an idea how old this theory is? Like, any historical knowledge? Like, do you know when was the first time game theory was actually discussed?
Ma'am, 20th century?
When we, I mean, no, actually.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
ma'am,
Yes, Siddharth.
ma'am, there was some philosopher from Greece who started a puzzle about soldiers either abandoning their post or staying.
Um, so I think so let's yeah so let's go back to that puzzle, and then I'll so do you so okay so let's go back to that puzzle in a bit, but I just want to explain how what this theory is and how it has evolved, right? So uh, okay, so and also while Siddharth has pointed out these puzzles, like you notice something that we're all trying to understand what our ancestors have done from the prism of the theory, the research that or the knowledge that we have right now, right? So the question that I asked is that what like have has anybody tried, like what have they done, like how far along are or how far along have we come, or when was the first time people actually wanted to evaluate these things? So when we talk about these puzzles, whether a soldier will leave the post, not leave the post, the person was still thinking about a logical problem. They weren't doing it out of the habit of you know or writing a theory about it, or you know perhaps trying to evaluate what would happen. The earliest evidence that we have of such kind of evaluation, which naturally, so the broadest way of understanding game theory is, what is game theory? It is the theory of games. Now, that is the easiest way of understanding what we do in game theory. Now, if you choose to look at the game of poker, you are more than welcome to. Nobody is going to ask you why are you looking at, how players are going to play in a poker game. If you want to look at the game of chess, the game of Ludo, I mean, you're more than welcome to. These are all, if you want to set up a social scenario, a social situation, or replicate it in form of game theoretical model, which economists and social scientists have done, that is also fine. So it is important to remember that this theory was developed by mathematicians actually in the first place. So the first evidence that we have of people trying to formulate something known as a strategy, something called as what you're going to do, some kind of formulation, like some kind of say theorizing about if we find similar games in the situation in our life, how are we going to respond, or how do human beings respond? So this kind of early discussion you find in around in actually in early 18th century, meaning about 1720s or 1730s, that some people like Hein Borel, people like I'm forgetting one scholar's name, but mostly it was Hein Borel. People like Hein Borel were trying to look at these games in or look at simple card games, and trying to see what will happen. And then everything was like, but then nothing was formalized. Everything was like silent for almost like a couple of centuries. And it's only in about 1920, 28, if I'm not mistaken, 1928 or 30, that von Neumann and Morgenstern, there were two brilliant economists, or you can say who had, or people, you can say call them polymaths, because they were trying to, they basically dabbled in everything. They were mathematicians who did work in economic theory, and they actually tried to formulate some of the basic theory of the subject. But the subject really exploded. You can say the theory was like a fierce theory, immediately got a fierce recognition with the help of somebody who started doing, who is actually kind of known as the father of game theory. Can anybody tell me who that person is?
John Nash.
Yes.
John Nash.
Yes. So he wrote in his thesis of, say, only a thesis of very, say, 30, 40 odd pages, that he wrote an entire treatise on Nash equilibrium. And and he was a mathematician, and he's not. So while the economists and the social sciences scientists started to appreciate this whole flavor, this brand new theory which had emerged, mathematicians were like, so what? They actually were like, well, you have to show us more. So John Nash actually is more known amongst mathematicians for his work in harmonic analysis and differential equations, as compared to the kind of recognition he got in social sciences. So that's just a side story. Nothing is undermining nobody's work, and it was a phenomenal work. And knowing his personal life, you can imagine how how brilliant that man has to be, that despite all his struggles, that he could do this. Or in another way, maybe he had to be a little mad to be able to do this. So so this was about 1950s. Now imagine this theory this theory is not technically, not even it's just 70 years old technically, because that's when the real application in economics started. Like around 1950s, people started to bring it into the social or strategic interaction in interaction in games, or sorry, interactions in real life situations. So in these 70 years, the Nobel Prize has been awarded to game theorists almost in the same equivalence. Like, so I think the ratio is 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 4, if I'm not mistaken. So every Nobel Prize in economics, out of all these Nobel Prizes that have been announced, 1 out of 5 have gone to gone to game theorists. And you can see it's just a span of 70 years. But this subject has revolutionized the way we perceive economy. way we perceive how our real life decisions for that matter. All right. So I mean, I mean, it is in that flavor. We at Jindal, we decided, to at least have 2 courses on game theory in our curriculum, right? Because at the end of the day, this is a really, this actually develops a unique way of, or a very, very, you can say, very logical way of looking at things, perceiving things. And mind you, game theory is not just about strategic interaction between players under competition. So game theory has also been able to explain people why people form, or why people cooperate with each other, why people form trust groups, why people collaborate with one another, right? What is the force? So it's not just that. First of all, we'll have to develop this understanding. Very often, people confuse the words that we have formalized in game theory with the English terms of it, or the vocabulary word. But it is very important to distinguish between, what between a selfish player and a player who is working for his own self-interest. So there is a difference between a self-interested player and a selfish player. Can anybody take a hit at trying to explain what I'm making, what I'm saying over here? What do you understand by self-interested player?
A self-interested player could be someone who wants the best possible outcome for themselves.
Right. And what do you think selfish would then be?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I meant selfish would be like the best possible outcome for themselves, and self-interest would be to ensure that the outcome is better than the other person's.
Anybody else?
Can I go?
Yes, Ananya, please.
So I think selfish is when the person is only thinking about their profit, and they're not thinking about other people, how it is how their action is negatively affecting other people. Whereas in a person who is self-interested, they also think about other parties as well. So their motive is that they will get profit, but they also think about the negative impacts that it has on other people.
So you have basically given me same definition for both words.
No, I said that selfish people, they don't think about the effects that it has on other people. So they decide according to only their best interest. Whereas self-interested people, they think about other people as well.
So then what do they use to decide what should they do?
That I don't know.
So yeah, so at that, yes, I have few hands raised. So let's take their opinion and then we'll continue. Siddharth.
No, I just forgot putting my hand.
Okay. Vishwa.
Maybe a self-interested player is just thinking about his own progress, whereas a selfish player may also want himself to go up as well as bring the other party down.
Exactly. This is the definition that I was looking for. And by the way, this is the distinction. How this is the distinction that many a times, even working professional economists make a mistake with. That the idea of self-interest that we talk about, it's very natural. It's a very natural phenomena within you, within me. We're looking out for us, right? Everybody is looking out for you, for yourself. The idea of selfishness is something very different. Selfishness has a negative connotation involved with it, but self-interest doesn't. If you mix these two, you will always have people coming and telling you, look, people who study game theory end up being a selfish person. No, They don't. If you do it right, you will actually become better citizens. You will actually become, it has the capability of making you more compassionate, because you will then start to theorize, or you then start to predict that if that that in what situations can the community come together to take certain actions, what are going to be harmful for you in the long run if you go against a person. So these kind of questions, you get a develop an ability to analyze this, which is what I think is one of the salient mistakes people make when they begin. And mind you, and I have had students who have become like, but ma'am, game theory says that we have to look out for our interests. So I said, but is it in your interests to go against your batch, in certain decisions, or is it in your interest to develop these, like I said, these extraordinary friendships between players, so that you have a beautiful life in the end, right? So that's something that as a disclaimer I wanted to put out when we are doing an introduction to game theory, that please, I am not working here to make you bad, to make you nasty human beings. I'm actually going to motivate you to analyze a situation and think whether you want to play nice or you want to play nasty, right? So also this gives me a nice segue into this question that I have always asked my students. So that have you come across, or have you in your school had had these some students who would still show up even if there was a mass bunk decided? Have you ever experienced this? Like you're in a class, and I don't know if you guys still had this concept of mass bunk, but like right before, the night before our school, or the next day of school, we'll get phone calls that today we have decided that there's going to be a mass bunk, especially in my school, and then you'll have to decide whether you want to be part of the mass bunk or you want to stay out of it and actually show up. So yes, every time that I have, we have, has anybody had that, experience in their schooling?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So were you the one who showed up, or were you the one who
No,
sat down?
no. I was in the hostel, right?
Right.
Um, so because some idiot decided to show up, we were dragged down into class.
Okay. Okay. So that's actually a pretty interesting consequence. And Gayatri, what about you?
Actually, we have this examination period, like wherever, like they ask students just to come to solve papers. So during that period of time, like our entire class collectively organizes in mass bunk.
Right.
Unfortunately, it was a one time that there was just one student who showed up in class, and it like caused a huge uproar.
So what do you think? Like what the student is thinking? Are they so there are two ways of going about it. Like uh, you either play uh, you either play nice and either go along with the plan, or you, Gayatri, your voice is breaking. I think you can mute if that's possible. Yeah. So I heard your point. Anish also has his hand raised, so let's hear from him and then I'll tell you. Anish, are you there? Okay. I think okay. Anyway, never mind. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that at any scenario in your life, these simple, real life scenarios, when you've been so frustrated with that one person who showed up, whereas the others sat down. Have you ever, so can you imagine what that person is thinking, or what that person, or person who is trying to sit out, person who is trying to, you know uh, kind of go through with, or sit or go through with the mass bunk, or somebody who is planning not to go through the mass bunk. these are all individual decisions, right? These are all individual decisions. And if somebody has, say, a huge social circle, or if somebody has, say a lot of peer pressure to face, if they turn up, then what? Then the problem is that so then is it in their interest to actually show up, or is it in their interest to sit out? So the answer is very fairly simple, right? That if you have kind of an accountability, or kind of a reputation, or you can say kind of a force, a relationship force, which is keeping you, or which is making you feel that I think it will be worse for me if I show up compared to if I don't. If it gives you that idea, and that is how people are thinking, by the way, you don't want to go against your friend. Why? Because there are going to be consequences, right? But what about the person who is showing up? How is his utility, or his or her utility, working? Maybe, the point is, maybe, you have words for it. You can call that person, whatever. You can, a teacher's pet, anything, but a loner, a loser, anything. But at the end of the day, his utility function or his payoffs are designed in a way that he or she has analyzed. And imagine, this is such a subconscious thinking that you're doing. What we are doing is we are trying to bring it out. We are trying to make you think what you have been thinking all along. So you actually sit and say, oh, but that person is also acting out of his self-interest. Now, his self-interest can be aligned with selfishness. I am not denying that. Right? I am not saying people are, there is no judgment in whenever I am theorizing about decisions people make. Right? Because for me, like for a game theorist, I mean, I don't judge. If you're selfish, well, maybe your utility function is designed that way, that you get some utility, you derive some satisfaction when you see others being hurt. Maybe it's that utility. Maybe you are a very trusting person, very trusting, so then maybe your utility is, you derive some satisfaction in, or more satisfaction in trusting people compared to when you don't trust people, right? So these are the aspects of human behavior that we do account for. What bottom line is, the bottom line is, what we are trying to say is that people inherently try to adjust their behavior according to what they think would give them maximum utility. That's what we are assuming. Now there is a point to remember over here, which is that if that actually lines up with the other debate that we that people have about why game theory becomes too, or you can say game theory makes certain assumptions which might not align with the real world. Because what have I just said now? That so basically, as a game theorist, I am saying that you are looking out for your self-interest, and most importantly, you are able to look out for your self-interest, right? The next debate, so the next debate is about your ability, whether your cognitive ability allows you to think that far ahead, to evaluate your decisions, which is something that we have seen through experiments, through data, that sometimes we assume we want players, or we want human beings to be able to think about the future, think 2 steps ahead. But then there would be somebody who is a bit myopic. They're not that far sighted. They might not think too far into the future. So they're the ones who you team as spontaneous. I live in the now. I live in the now. But then this statement, if you say you live in the now, is also very misleading, because or at the same it's misleading, but at the end of the day it's also dangerous, because for us, because you then I am not then or you don't fall into the kind of players that I am I am theorizing about, I'm writing about. If you are not, if your cognitive ability does not make you think that, okay, if I go against this my classmate, I have repercussions, whether those repercussions are cancel out in terms of the benefit I get from being or being the good student in my faculty's eyes. If you're able to do that analysis, good. But if somebody is sitting and thinking, oh, okay, okay, I don't care, I just don't want to go, or okay, I don't care, I just want to go, without thinking about the consequences, then perhaps the assumption with which we are saying that you are, or we are trying to predict what you're going to do, might be incorrect, right? So we might be thinking you will play a certain way, but and after setting up the entire model, thinking about your payoffs, everything, but we might be predicting something wrong, because inherently you don't players are not as far sighted as we have assumed them to be, right? So we do have these quite many extensions. We do have these quite many relaxations in assumptions that maybe players, okay, maybe, so what if players are myopic to a certain extent? What if one person can think, what if they people are playing against each other repeatedly, and what if one person can think of the outcome till they say 10 rounds, and what if there's one, he's playing against a person who is only able to think till maybe say 2 rounds, not more than that? So what happens there? Does this difference in cognitive ability play out? So there are many ways of understanding what the situation is. But I think what I wanted to talk to you about today was that please, a very fundamental decision that you as an individual has taken all your life can be modeled formally using game theory, right? So these the courses that I think as of now I teach you game 1, whereas some other faculty teaches you game 2. I think this is something you learn in your second semester. Game 1 second semester, game 2 third semester. But so this can also change the point, and because I also teach a lot of math courses and stuff. So my point is, whenever you come across or whenever you start your journey in game theory, always remember, or if you want, you can go back to the recording and hear it out once and then begin your course. That we are not here to make judgments. We are not here to make ourselves selfish players. We are simply here to understand how we behave and how rest of the world behaves. That's how you're going to interpret. So I think we have some time. We can play a quick game if you guys are interested. I'm not going to do. Yeah, we have about 42 people. I'm not going to give a very complicated game, but I just want to, I'll explain you. So, yes, Vedic.
I had a question
Sure, Vedic.
before we can move on to the game. So, what if you study game theory specifically for reasons of your own self-interest, or like some would say, if I want to study game theory for selfish reasons, what happens then?
You want to study game theory for selfish reasons? You can.
Not me in particular, but
I mean, anybody.
what
I
if
know
one wants to study game theory for selfish reasons? What happens then?
What do you mean? What do you mean? What happens then? What
I
are
mean,
you wanting?
is there some sort of ethical reproach? Are they prohibited to do so, or can somebody just
Leave. That's what I meant. Leave. That's what I meant when I said I have no qualms. I have absolutely no qualms in in accepting selfish people, I have absolutely no qualms in accepting, non-selfish people. This is why I'm saying that there is no judgment here. Game theory makes no judgment. Game theory merely explains. So if I want to study game theory for selfish reasons, perhaps, so if you interpret it, I am studying game theory for selfish reasons, meaning I am studying it so that others can feel bad about it. But that's not a very logical conclusion if you think about it. So
Yeah,
if
true.
you,
But
yeah,
what I mean is, I'm sure there are some people who have studied game theory for games such as blackjack, which have
so
monetary
you make
rewards in the end.
hang on. So that is self-interest. We are back to the logic of self-interest. You can play, you can learn how to be good at blackjack. This is a very, very, because why? You are willing to pay for the crime if you get caught, as well as you're willing to reap the benefits if you win using blackjack. So my point is, it's again a self-interest, again in the category of self-interest, that you're trying to just learn a skill.
I
Is it
see.
a good skill? So there are
Mhm.
no ethical conundrums here. We don't make this assumption. We don't.
Understood.
Yeah. So somebody would come and say, but this is wrong for you. But and that is part of the, you know, part of this and this whole idea of society, of civilization. If somebody, if if you want to live in a society, there are some absolutes that even if you were extremely interested in, maybe that maybe interested in, that you won't do, because then again there are consequences, and and there are real punishments. There are, like I said, there are incentives to persuade you or dissuade you from taking a certain actions. So it is actually a science of incentives, if I have to be exact. If there is an incentive structure which allows you to behave in a certain way, you will choose that incentive first. And if it's profitable, you will choose that first. That's the whole idea of game theory. Yes, Ananya.
So in game theory, we make no moral or ethical judgments.
No, we don't. Theory doesn't judge. How can think about it? It's a math. It's a model. How will it be able to judge? The way you. So as an observer, I look at a conclusion. I look at a conclusion which I have derived from using, by using tools of game theory. I look at this conclusion and I'm like, well, it doesn't sit well with me. So I do give a clarification. I do tell people that this is, we have only explained what human behavior is. There is no way we are supporting this behavior, right? That's all I can say. But that's my own personal opinion. The theory itself is, it's like you're feeding numbers and you're getting the outcome, right? If you're right,
Yes.
yeah. So yeah, I had somebody else also raise the hand. No. Okay. So I am going to write the link. I'll give you the link. Hang on. It's I think Virginia Lab experiment link. So we can all. This is actually, we got so. I got so engrossed in talking with you guys that I completely misjudged the time frame that we have. So let's just play this one so that at least you can see what. So can everybody see the link? This is the.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I think there is one person who has joined later, so I'm sending it again. So this is the link where you will use your. You will sign in as a. Hang on. I'll show
Ma'am,
you.
they're asking for a session name.
Yes. So okay. So you will sign in as so. What page is open for you? Is it the initial login for all programs? Is this?
Yes,
Ma'am is
miss.
asking for a login ID.
Yeah, so
Yes,
login,
ma'am.
I have given you the login ID. It is QCX3. See? So you have that. And how many of you are there? I need to, but don't log in just yet because I'm still setting up the number of players. So how many of you are there? Hang on. Let me look at the chat. Where is the chat? I have 41 players. Now 40. Okay. So is it, so I'll put 40 and whosoever can join in and the rest can sit out because that's how it's going to be. 40. Okay, this is.
Ma'am, should we begin?
No, I'll give you one. I'll tell you when. I just have to set this because I had to refresh the page. Okay, so now you can log in by using QCX3. I think that's the session that you have to join in. QCX3. Yeah, I can see the names now. So good. Has everybody been able to join in? Because so what does your page look like? Are you teamed up with, are you being shown the
The
matrix?
Wait
wait
screen,
screen
ma'am.
is coming.
Yes,
Which
ma'am. The wait screen is there.
On the
Wait
wait
screen.
screen.
yeah, I
Wait
think
screen.
we are waiting for everybody to log in.
Ma'am, I believe we cannot join till we have all 41.
Yeah. So that don't worry about it. I'll open multiple logins. So that's fine. We can adjust.
Should I back out? Because I'm already in round 1.
Yes, ma'am. Even my screen says
No,
like
don't
submit
back
the
out.
sheet.
Don't back out. Don't back out. Whosoever is in round 1. Now, see, slowly, if you, I think so what this software does it's matching you with another player as people are joining in, right? So there are about 10 groups which are already being made. So are now 11. So what you have to do is, so this is a strategic interaction game. What you're doing is you are playing with one of your own, one of the classmates, basically. Now, the payoff matrix takes a little bit, longer for me to explain. So let me. Yeah. So let's see if I'm being matched. Okay. So the way the matrix has been written, notice that, in each cell, That's how I'm going to explain a little bit. So can everybody see the matrix, or are they still waiting?
No, I'm still waiting.
Ma'am,
I
I'm
am still on the
still
wait screen.
waiting.
Still waiting.
Still on the waiting.
Okay. So fast, join fast. I mean, whosoever is. Otherwise, I'll modify the game a little bit to include lesser players. So only 22 people have joined in, as far as I can see. Is that
Yes, ma'am.
true?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm actually going to put about 22 people, and then just so maybe I don't know if you'll have to log in again. Maybe you'll have to log in again. So just update it and try logging again. I think that would help. And you can just use your initials in the names. You don't have to type completely, if that's okay. Okay, so yes, we have about 22. So can we see the matrix now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I can't join because it says that the maximum number of participants have been reached.
Yeah, because I think people were some were slow, some were fast. So I apologize. I think we'll do this when we in game one again. In the meantime, try being the spectator, because try see what's happening. I'm I mean I because again and again, if I modify, people have to log in and join in again. So the game is now going to be played between 22 people. So what you see in the first treatment, that is, or first matrix that has been given to you, there is a decision. Player there are buttons. Player one has to, or you can say the row player has to choose between top or bottom. The column player gets to choose between left or right. Right now, the numbers that are written have a pattern. The first number in each cell would be the payoff of row player, and the second number would be the payoff of the column player. So if I say both players, so if I say say uh, a strategy of say top and left are played by both players, then row player would get 3, left, or you can say column player would get 3, right? 3 comma 3, that's the payoff. So if rogue player plays top and the column player plays right, then row player gets 0, column player gets 5. That's how the interaction is. That's how the payoffs can be understood. So it's a very nice and concise way of writing your utility. So, and it is in terms of dollars. So how much money you are getting. So now I think for everybody there would be a designated role, whether they will be a row player or whether they will be a column player. Now you have to choose based on that what player you are playing against. Based on this matrix, you have to choose your response. So if you are a row player, you have to choose between top or bottom. If you are a column player, you have to choose between left or right. Once you make your choice and you enter it, I can see it here in my analysis. Right, so I already have few people writing. So take 2 more minutes, but please finish. Like, it's very easy to compare, or if it's very easy to decide. Even if you don't want to compare, you can just choose. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and you can choose.
So, ma'am, we need to decide the best combination for the both.
Why both? Like I said,
so for
again,
you individually.
Because the point is, why would you care if somebody else is getting something or not? And by the way, this is entirely on you. If you want to decide, on the basis of how much both are getting, you can. But I am going to again ask you to think whether it should matter to you what your opponent is getting or not, or whether it shouldn't.
Okay.
There is no right answer, by the way, over here. It's just your choice. What I will tell you eventually is that game theory tells you, pretty much tries to tell you a right answer.
Ma'am, but here interdependence matters, because even if I choose what is best for me, it would still depend on my opponent whether I get what I have chosen or not.
Absolutely. This is the exact point. It would depend. So can you choose wisely is the big question. So how do you measure this dependence? Like, you're saying this is the whole idea behind strategic interaction. That, I will either if row player will either get $3 or get $0, depending on whether his opponent plays left or right. Right? If he chooses top, and if he chooses bottom, he gets either $5 or $2, depending on whether your opponent is choosing left or right. Right? So this is this kind of interdependence, right? You do depend on your opponent, because in what cell you will eventually end up is defined by both, actions of both players. Which is why, if you remember your argument of, the example of mass bunking, right? If everybody shows up, you are in a different outcome, right? Nobody is punished. If half of you show up, the other half doesn't, then the other half who doesn't might be punished, has to pay a penalty. If even one person shows up and the other people don't, they have still some consequences to bear. So the outcomes are different, are varying. But your decision is whether to show up or not to show up. So those are your actions, right? What is the payoff if you show up would depend on how many have actually showed up in class, right? Right, so we have about everybody, I think. We are still waiting for Vatsal. If you could quickly click on anything.
The button isn't working. I clicked many times.
Okay. Can you refresh the page and then maybe?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah. Because I think then I'll be able to show my screen.
Maybe it's still not working.
Okay. I want it to work. So maybe you will log in again, because I think the results are not visible until and unless you do. So try the emergency start option, where you put the session name again and your ID is, I think, already with you. So put
It
that
isn't
idea.
working like that.
What do you mean? Hang on.
I still can't get in because
No, you won't be able. So people who have already gotten in, it's him that he has to still, he has to put in his answer.
Damn, it's still
okay.
not working.
That's very strange. Okay. Because it's constantly updating here. Okay, so okay, let me share the page with you and then you can see. Right. So can you see what I am seeing in terms of the matrix game results?
Yes.
Right? Yes. So I have right now, there are no names here. Now see, what it's telling me is in terms of proportions. So it's telling me that for row decision, people who are like row players have actually chosen top most of the times compared to 60% of the time compared to people who have chosen bottom. On the other hand, column decision people have chosen many of you have chosen right compared to left. So can I ask some, let me show names now. Can I ask maybe Gayatri to explain why she is choosing right?
Because for two reasons. One is because bottom right has the two division, which means like both player gets two. So this is something like if they also chose bottom as for their self-interest of getting a complete 5, then it will ensure that I have a split of 2. And because like normally people work on self-interest in usual cases.
No, but why not left? Because then both of you are getting 3-3.
Yes, but then again, there is a high probability of the other person choosing bottom. And in that case, as a column player, I myself will get a 0% share.
Excellent. This is excellent, excellent. And what about somebody who is choosing top? Like I want to hear the other side as well. So let's hear out from, say, oh, I want to show names. Let's hear out from Arush. Arushi is again, sorry. Siddharth. Siddharth, are you there? Let's hear out from what you think, why you chose top.
Why did I choose top? I don't remember. I actually chose randomly.
Okay, you chose randomly. Okay, somebody who actually made a conscious or choice or maybe thought about why they are choosing top. Say let's hear from VL. Who is VL?
Yeah, it's me. It's Vedic.
Yeah.
So I actually chose top because it was very optimum in the sense that same argument, right? What is the probability that a column player goes for left? Pretty low, but I thought that people would be thinking about the optimum decision, which is that everybody would work to get the highest amount of money they can.
So see how your brain works. You are thinking that the economic pie in this game is maximum when you are in the top left cell, right? Like it's 6. So 3 plus 3 is 6. As compared to any other scenario where the economic pie is, or you can say the maximum both players can get is either 5 or 4, right? But if you're in top left, you are thinking that we are both getting 6. Now, if you knew your opponent and then you chose like this, right? Then you chose like this, perhaps it was still on the perhaps it was still a a normal behavior in the game theoretic sense. What if you are meeting strangers, or what if you are meeting a person that you can't really trust, that they might not be thinking to go for the economic buy. They might be thinking that, okay, if you play top, it is best for me to play right because I get more money. And if you play bottom, it is again best for me to play right because I get more money. Right? That's how the column player should, like game theory tells you, that's how a column player would be thinking. That, given, if I assume that you are going to play action top, what should I respond by? If I assume that you are going to play bottom, what should I respond by? So in this game, if row player is playing top, you actually should respond by playing right. Why? Because you have a better, you have a, because, or you say because right is your best response, meaning you get the maximum money out of it. If you now if you and if your opponent is playing bottom, even then between $0 and $2, you are still getting more if you play right. So what I'm saying over here is that, as if I were looking at just these monetary values, the column player could have easily chosen right, irrespective of what his opponent is doing, because the scenario, the chance of your opponent playing either, or doesn't matter if your opponent is playing top or bottom, you can do best only when you are playing right. You see this, and this is, by the way, only specific to this particular game. And this kind of thinking is what we develop further into game theory. So we have, I think, run out of time. So I'll stop here. Unless you have more questions for me, I'm happy to answer. But I'm going to stop the session now. Yeah. So do you have more questions for me? Is the intuition that I'm talking about clear? Kind of making sense that you try to evaluate each scenario in your head. You think, okay, what if somebody plays top? Okay, then how should I respond? What if somebody plays bottom? How should I respond? Likewise, the row player would be thinking, what if somebody plays left? Well, how should I respond? What if somebody plays right? How should I respond? This is what Nash taught us. This is the idea behind Nash equilibrium, by the way. Yes, Anushka Chib.
Ma'am, I'm not sure if this question is relevant, but is game theory in any way closely related to psychology, like the decision-making part?
So we have tried to. First of all, it developed as a purely mathematical abstract idea. Like I said, people were actually sitting and evaluating the game of chess. And then somebody came along the way, like, Newman came, Morgenstern came, and they wrote a book, Theory of Economic Behavior, I think. And that's when they kind of incorporated game theory formulation or modeling in ways you can evaluate these individual decisions. At the same time, a lot has happened from 1920s till now. So we have tried to incorporate a lot of psychology based nuances in our modeling. Unfortunately, there's not everything that you can incorporate, right? Because, after all, what psychology tells us is that human mind is unique. There are patterns to your behavior, but at the end of the day, each mind works in its own way. Whereas game theory is telling you there is symmetry in ways which people think. Right. So you can combine a little bit of, or you can take a little bit of from both the streams and try to formulate a story where you do appreciate the differences as well. Right. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. What about Anushka Maheshwari? I have two Anushkas in
So
my.
we played the game, right? And we clearly don't know any of the classmates. So
Your
why would
voice
I
is
think
not
of the
very
other person?
Go ahead. Go ahead. I couldn't hear you. Yeah.
Ma'am, we just played the game and we
Hmm.
clearly don't know any of the classmates. So why would we think of the other person's interest?
No, but what if you are a hopeful person? What if you are an optimistic person? You're thinking, or maybe sometimes that's what I have been talking about. Sometimes, even when you are self-interested, you can be trusting. Even when you are self-interested, you can be optimistic. So maybe you are thinking, if there is a chance of, or if for that simple reason, maybe you are thinking that the other person will make a mistake. Because at the end of the day, that's what happens in poker also. By the way, you're bluffing also, right? To see they say you're playing the player, not the person, not the car. You're playing the person, not the cards, really. So in any such game where you have an opportunity to bluff, to deviate, to maybe confuse people, and especially in an experiment when you are not knowing anybody, you just see the numbers and you think, well, sometimes people don't think, right? Like you heard one argument where where somebody chose a random between top left, they just click top and that's it. Like between, it's a 50-50% chance. Now what if you face an opponent like that, you know who's just picking randomly? So these are some possibilities that maybe, so like, for a game theorist will tell you is not a correct way of approaching a problem. But game theory doesn't teach how to live your life. It is actually predicting how you live your life, or it's trying to understand how you live your life. So very often this is the reason why we don't give you the theory before we run an experiment. And the reason is that the moment I tell you this game theory predicts that bottom and right is the equilibrium or is the solution, everybody is going to play that. So if I have to predict human behavior, I would actually want you to do whatever you want, right, with it. So like I said, no right, no wrong. If you are choosing randomly, that is also fine. All right. So are there any more questions? I hope you had fun listening to, in this lecture today, because this is a long journey and that I'm promising you. And unless and until you become, you have fun, you engage, you feel more confident, because we are will go into the mathematical side of it a bit later on. So the story remains very interesting, but I will teach you the tools as well. How to write down a proper definition, how to set up any situation, like, a mass bunk example. I'll give you the tools that you can set up a game of your own. Okay, so anything else you want to add, or shall we conclude? I have a meeting at 12:30 as well. Is this okay?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
guys.
ma'am.
Thank you for attending.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Great session.
Okay. All the best for your coming semesters. Good luck. Bye bye.
Bye.